What's up, everyone? Welcome or welcome back to the Conscious Corner. I'm the ghetto philosopher or the street scholar. I don't have anything set in stone yet. With time, though. We're now going to move on to capitalism. That is going to be the focus of this episode. I start off with Black Friday because I felt there was no better way to kick it off. And Black Friday would lead me. Black Friday is the result of a bigger issue: capitalism. Capitalism is a very large, wide, dense topic. So I wanted to just break it down once again to recap into a 5-part series. Seeing that it's the holiday season, I think this is the perfect time. And this episode is basically just going to be an overview. What is capitalism? Where did it come from? Some pros, cons, all that. All right, cool. Before we get into that, I want to start off with some affirmations. This is not my podcast. I was about to get into the whole podcast spiel, but I have a mix. Some affirmations that I have for the month that I've been saying, as well as some anti-capitalistic affirmations. So I'm going to read them, repeat after me. Today, I choose peace over pressure, presence over perfection, and progress over comparison. My heart is open, my mind is calm, and my soul is grounded in trust. I'm exactly where I need to be. I reject the systems that prioritize profit over people, and I choose community care over individualism. I perceive love everywhere I go. I resist the pressures of hustle culture and prioritize my mental, emotional, and physical well-being. All energy is clearing, new energy is entering, and great things are coming. I trust that we can create a world where resources are shared and all needs are met without exploitation. I believe in a future where people and the planet are prioritized over corporate greed. I embrace abundance that is rooted in connection, mutual aid, and solidarity, not scarcity or scarcity. All right, so what is capitalism? That's the age-old question. What is capitalism exactly? We all have a basic understanding of what it is. I want you to think about what capitalism is, or what do you know it to be, before I give a definition. What are the things that come to your mind when you think of capitalism? I'll give you a moment. All right, cool. You're probably somewhere along the lines of, oh, people having money and this, and well, people having money, or the way that money is affecting. When people think of capitalism, more than likely you think of something bad, because that is the negative connotation. That there's a negative connotation around capitalism. Sorry. There is a negative outlook or opinion when it comes to capitalism. Now, capitalism is basically just a type of system, economic or economic system. Economics being or dealing, it just deals with everything: production, transfer of wealth, consumption, all of those things. That's when you think of economics or the economy, that is what you're thinking of. All right, cool. I try to make this. I want my 6-year-old cousin to be able to watch this and understand why capitalism is bad, and finally decide that he doesn't want to be bought toys anymore. Wish me luck. Okay, so from what I have here, I'll just say Capitalism is an economic system where private being owned by themselves, or businesses own capital, that's money, products, services, and workers are paid wages, money, but don't own any of the capital. So they don't own, they could, for instance, let's say that I was working in a shoe making factory, or I was working for a shoe company. Whatever shoes I make, no matter the design, everything would belong to the owners, or the owners of the company. Cool. The origin of the word capitalism is Latin. It comes from a word, I feel like I'm going to butcher it, capitalis, not sure, but it just means head of cattle. Think about that, people. The origin of this word is Latin, and the Latin word means head of cattle. All right, cool. Anyway, so capitalism relies heavily on ownership, contracts, and I'm going to be very neutral. I don't want to paint it in a bad light as yet, because essentially capitalism is just one of the economic systems. So inherently it's not bad itself, but the way it's being used, the things that is happening within the system, is what makes it bad. I'll get into some more of that later. To make the most amount of money possible, what capitalists or these business owners have to do is be efficient. Being efficient just means making the most of, not even making the most of what you have, but being able to make a lot with a little. So they have these things called capital resources. Capital resources just being tools, machines, or resources that they use to create their products or these services. And the one of the issues that you find a lot of people have with capitalism is with these capital resources. Businesses are now, to make even more money, they're deciding to now use child labor, underpaid workers in these factories in third world countries to make their products. So they make, once again, the most money with, they make the most out of a little of product, while using, essentially now humans are becoming a resource versus being actual humans within this system. So think about that. Keep that in the back of your mind. All right, moving on. Another thing that capitalists depend heavily on is the free market. The free market is basically this idea, or this idea that was made up by this economist, Adam Smith. We'll get to him later, but in this free market, there's no government regulations or no government ruling. Businesses are the ones that make the prices based on their competition with other businesses or people offering the same products or services that they are. They can compete, and whatever the price is, they decide based on competition. So if I say, for instance, if I make, I don't know, shoes, once again, let's go back to shoes. If I make shoes, I'm selling my shoes for $40. You may decide you want to sell yours for $30 so that you could get more sales. And so it just depends on that. There's no ruling in the market. It usually isn't. So I want to talk now, that moves me into the types of capitalism. There are three. What most countries practice today is mixed capitalism. This is where there is a bit of government regulation. They have a little bit of say here. They make some rules, but essentially there is still the capitalists or business owners making these decisions. These private companies and businesses making these decisions. Then you have the, is kind of the absolute version more so. It's the original, or what capitalism was kind of supposed to be. The term laissez-faire I feel like I butchered that as well. But that type of capitalism is almost it literally means, the phrase itself means letting nature take its place. Not exactly like that, but something along those lines, or just letting nature take its place. But that's where the government has minimal control. They still have a little bit of say, but not too much. Then you have anarcho capitalism, where there is no government say at all. There's no government rule. All these private businesses say what's what, make the rules, and that's that. Even in public schools, that is the case. Everything is run privately. Cool. Always remember that capitalism, it heavily relies on private ownership, private property. Cool. So now we get into some of the pros and cons of capitalism. So for the pros first, the pros of capitalism is, sorry, I can't help myself. The pros are better use of capital resources. Don't forget, these resources are just the machines, materials, all these different things that you use to make your product. That's what capital resources are. Competition leads to lower consumer prices. It may have been at one point, but that's not the case anymore. Pay and general standards of living rise overall. You'll see why that would be said or thought when I get into how capitalism came to be. And it is supposed to enable or encourage, more creativity and new things constantly being made. So they're saying that with these different businesses competing, everybody wants to be on top. So there's always something new being made, or there's always some new upgrade or addition or innovation happening, right? Now the cons. Capitalism can cause tension between the rich and the poor or working class. It can cause huge wealth and social inequalities like we see today. It can lead to corruption and funny business happening to make more money. The capitalists or the business owners to making more money, like exploitation, child labor, all these different things that I was talking about earlier. And then negative effects such as pollution. That's something I'll get into in the next episode. Not pollution itself, but why this is a thing. I love to bring in communism and all that, so that could. But stay with me here. We moving, but I want it to be very. You're all right. Now, how did capitalism become a thing? What brought this about? How did we get here? Why are we here now? So capitalism is a mix of two other economic systems that was used back in the earlier centuries in Europe: feudalism and mercantilism. Feudalism was this system where the poor, there's always been the classes, right? Not glasses, because I don't know if you could hear me pronounce it. The classes. You always had the rich and the poor. Back in the day, 12th century Europe, they were called nobles, the nobles being rich. You were rich, you were in this class, you were rich, you would consider rich and well off, or noble because you had land. So the only thing I get ahead of myself. And you had the poor, or the serfs, or the working class. They were, in this system, what used to happen is the serfs or the poor people would work, and they were not paid in money or wages. They were paid, their wage would be room and board. So the nobles would let them stay on their land and, have somewhere to stay, somewhere to eat, all this different stuff. That was their pay. All right. There's always been, as I said before, these two classes. You have the rich and the poor. And the only thing that changed, quite literally, was what classified you as being rich or poor. Back in the day, it was you having land. You having land is what made you well off. Not necessarily saying that that's the only thing you had. You obviously would have money and stuff too, but it was harder to move up in classes, because if you were not left or inherited land, how could you understand what I'm saying? How could you become rich if you didn't have land? And if they were not paying you money to be able to get or inherit land, or if you didn't have anybody to inherit land from, how could you become rich? Right, cool. Now, moving forward, around this time, industrialization, which is essentially just people scaling, or there being a large scale of manufacturing or making of products and goods, and this being in factories. Yeah, I'd say that in factories they needed workers, so these poor people, and they were actually being paid in wages. So this is now how we started to see capitalism come into play a little bit. It's not done this yet, but that was a part of it. So industrialization was what led, or was what was the beginning of what we would, not industrialization itself, but this is what would lead to people now being able to participate or partake in capitalism. Good. Obviously, oh, one more thing. It was a good opportunity for the serf or the poor people because, as I said, they'll be able to make money, and with making money or making these wages, it would give you a chance to move up in class. All right, now on to the second half of what kind of made or shifted the world into this capitalistic system. Started to move us that way. Mercantilism. This is what I consider to be the colonizers or the white man's tool. Let me explain. Mercantilism is essentially or basically just a system of trading. This was popularized and replaced feudalism in around the 16th to 18th century in Western Europe. What they was doing, they was trading in between towns. After a while, what happened was everyone started to have the same things. So trading wasn't as valuable, or it wasn't as exciting anymore. When this happened, they expanded the trading circle, now moving from just towns to different counties, provinces, nations, all that stuff. After a while, the exact same thing happened. Everyone started to have the same thing. This is called homogenization. Word of the day. When this happened, they now started to go to different continents, and nations. The British were first to do this, or I won't even say first, but they were quick on this. And I trying to stay calm, y'all. Just even talking about this stuff is just crazy. But what they did was, when they went over, it was no longer about trading, but it did become more so about increasing their profit and expanding their territory. My camera's about to overheat, guys. 1 second. All right, yes, where was I? Okay, yes, the colonizers. So their intention at this point, when they decided to move into going to other countries and continents, was not to expand the trade, but to now go and take over these places and get new resources. The British went to these different continents to now go to the people's turf and take it, make it their own. This is the process of colonization. This is what we know to be colonization, and those who didn't know what colonization was, that's essentially what it is. I come to your turf, I want it, I take it, that's mine. Boom. It's not interesting, what was very disgusting, but I'm trying to stay calm, guys. What they would do, they would take the raw materials, raw resources from these different nations, the nations, countries, the different continents. What in this case would be referred to as capital resources. Don't forget, capital resources being the tools, machines, resources, natural resources, or whatever it is you're using to make your product within, or what you use to make your capital. Capital being, it could be money, it could be products, all these different stuff, right? I just got to keep refreshing all of these meanings. So once again, yes, they would take these raw resources or the raw materials and take them from these colonies now carry them back to the motherland, and make a final product, bring it back to these colonies and sell it to them. Not trade, but sell it to them. So, for instance, in Africa, you have Sierra Leone. They would take the iron ore from there, make guns. In the Americas, as well as India, they had cotton. They would take the cotton, make clothing. As I said, they would bring it back, sell it. What they would do next, is not really next, but what they also did was they made fake money or pseudo currency to ensure that these colonies would not be able to trade with other nations. So essentially, you're a colony of the British nation. I don't want you trading with the Spanish nation. That's what it was like. Remember that guy I mentioned before, Adam Smith, the economist? He saw this and was like, nah, son, this ain't right. This is unjust. It's creating an imbalance. Something needs to be done. He had this theory and this idea for the free market. The free market, once again, like I said, is essentially where you have right to property or whatever it is, products, all that stuff. You have private ownership. You can have private ownership. There's no rules. There's no government. There's no state involved in the rule making or all this stuff. It's just like it sounds, a free market. This opened the door for capitalism, and hi, here we are today. One thing that I also want to mention, as I said, let's move back to the classes. The only thing that changed, there's always been a rich and poor. There's always been that divide within the classes, but the only thing that changed was what made you, or what classed you as rich, which would be land, from land to capital. Capital being, as I said once again, a business, money, products, goods, all that stuff. And lastly, it went from being nobles to businessmen or business people, and from serfs to the working class. All right, y'all. That was the episode. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope y'all was able to understand. If y'all have any questions, you could comment, you can message me, whatever it is. As I said, the only way for me to liberate you is to educate you. I think that's going to be a little tagline. I like that. And that's my goal. So if there's still things that you don't understand, let me know. I can clarify, clear it up. And I just give you all the information as I research and learn. Because funny enough, it's not funny at all. But I never knew all of this about capitalism. This isn't something that I knew straight off the dome. I did research on it. I found out these things. I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. This is how this became to be. Or this how this came to be, sorry. And yeah, so I'm happy that I'm doing this because I'm learning as I try to help y'all learn or educate y'all. The next episode, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not even going to tell you what the next part is going to be. I don't have an outro, but I would say blessings to all. Thank you for tuning in, listening, and see y'all next time. Grab a seat in the conscious corner. We'll work on it. Later.